Welcome to the PowerBack podcast. PowerBack is a teen dating abuse outreach program operated by a Partnership for Change, a nonprofit agency dedicated to ending domestic violence and dating abuse. Visit our website at apartnershipforchange.org to learn more about how law enforcement, school counselors, social service agencies, and many more can benefit from our programs in New Jersey.
So we're going to talk about the difference between abusive behavior and just kind of like bad or unhealthy behavior. So just to recap, this is episode 2. Our mission is to have real conversations about issues that we face in relationships and bring awareness to the dangers of dating abuse. So this is a topic that's really, really prevalent, and I'm actually really excited to talk about it.
Love it. So we're talking differences between unhealthy relationships and abusive relationships. We'll probably throw in the word toxic a few times and see which category that falls into, like we brought up last time. Yeah. Okay, so we talked a little bit last time about what an abusive relationship is. Could you maybe just define that one more time? Don't trip over it. No, it's okay.
How about you define it?
Sure, I can define it. I could try. So an abusive relationship is when one person uses power and control, uses their power to control their partner by instilling a fear of consequences. And did I get that right? Did I get it all the way?
Yeah.
I feel like there was something I left out, but yeah. So that is a very specific definition. And so there's a very concrete way that we talk about these things. There's very concrete, like, there's different types of abuse. There's different warning signs. There's different things that we look at that are very specific, that as opposed to characteristics of a bad relationship, a relationship that's not working, a relationship that just doesn't feel right, one that even makes you feel bad, but it maybe not rise to the level of abuse where you are fearing for your life or fearing for these consequences. So those are the distinctions we're going to talk about, and like different things that come up that teenagers ask us about. Just kind of try to really draw that distinction, because there's a lot of questions surrounding what things happen in relationships and how do we categorize it.
Yeah, and okay, I said this in the last episode, but I just really want to make sure it was right off the bat we are very distinct in saying that abuse really is a pattern about power and control.
Right.
It is not an argument. It's not like you're having a bad day and you say something mean to your partner. It's really about somebody having constant control over them. And if there's ever a time when the victim in the case decides to break free, then there could be a fear of negative consequences. So that person could be seriously hurt, even killed. We see that, unfortunately, sometimes as well when it comes to teen dating abuse. So really important to throw that out there in the beginning.
So you brought up right off the bat that leaving the relationship could have some real negative consequences. So we can understand that right off the bat as a huge distinction between an unhealthy relationship and an abusive one. In an unhealthy one, or a good one, I mean, we're just really just the difference between an abusive and any relationship would be that you can safely leave that relationship without fearing what would happen. There may be sadness, there will be sadness, there may be anxiety, there may be all those things.
It won't be pretty. It's going to be really hard.
It will be hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what every breakup song is about. It's very, very hard.
Right.
But the negative consequences, maybe we can talk about that. Some of the, like, what makes it so difficult to leave an abusive relationship?
Yeah. So going back to the definition, if abuse is all about power and control the entire time, and then the victim decides to take their power back, that's when the abuser loses control, and that's when emotions are very, very heightened, and that's when they might do something very drastic, like try to hurt the victim, or again, even kill the victim. So it's really important that if you are going to break up with somebody, to have a safety plan. Safety planning means breaking up with them in a public place if you have to break up with them in person, avoiding places like the car or the kitchen or the bathroom if you're in your home, making sure that somebody can drive you to and from the place that you're going to break up with that person. And after you break up with them, do not have any contact with them, because it's really dangerous. The time where we see the most fatalities in domestic violence and dating abuse is during the breakup process because people don't have safety plans. So it's really important to know that if you're planning on breaking up with somebody that's abusive to you, even if they've never physically abused you, always have a safety plan. Always make sure that during the breakup process, you have people that know your plan, that are in your corner, and that you're breaking up in a public place, and that you have a lot of backup, that you save evidence of any abuse, and it will make things, again, it will be hard, but as long as you're safe, that's really the biggest thing that we could tell you all, and really make sure that that you're safe throughout the process.
We'll come right back to that, but can you just tell me really quick what's the difference between domestic violence and dating abuse? How do you just?
Yeah, that, you know what, I actually wanted to bring that up in the last episode.
Yeah, good. Because I heard you say that, like, domestic violence.
Yeah. It's funny because when we ask people the types of abuse, when we go into the schools and we do our forums and we talk about the types of abuse, so many people are like domestic violence. Domestic violence is typically what happens in a household. So when we think of the word domestic, we think of something that happens at home, and it typically happens between people who are in adults who are either married to each other or are in a very committed relationship to each other. So when we think of the word domestic, think of what happens in a household. When we think of dating abuse, we're talking about people who do not live together, typically teenagers, who don't live together because they're not old enough to live together yet. So domestic violence is what happens, I would say, when teenagers continue abusive relationships into adulthood, and they live together.
Okay, right. Yeah. It makes sense. So, so then just right back to what you were talking about, coming up with a safety plan, because we know that the most dangerous time in an abusive relationship is leaving because the abuser has lost their power and their control. And this is why this is called PowerBack. That's when the person, you've taken your power back. Anyway, what are some of the other things? So we skipped right ahead to, right, like when you're trying to leave. But in the relationship, the distinctions between the two, there seems to be, like we say, like some maybe misunderstandings about, well, let's just talk about what are the things that do come up that define it as abusive versus unhealthy.
Yeah. So something I see a lot, and this gets asked all the time, is cheating.
Oh, okay, yeah, right.
Joe,
right.
Do you think cheating is abusive?
I think it depends.
Okay.
I think if you are using, really, I have to say no. Actually, sorry. The reason being, it's a really it's something that really breaks somebody's trust, no doubt. I mean, you establish a relationship with somebody, and the trust is the thing that is the relationship, really. And so if that trust is broken, then the relationship becomes really hard to rebuild and to believe in, to have a rock to stand on, whatever, all of that. Rising to the level of abuse, to me, and I'm going to throw it right back to you when I'm done, but it feels more like using any tactic that is purposefully controlling the person that you're with. So it just doesn't seem to rise to that. It could be so hurtful. I honestly, I don't want to downplay that at all. It could be a really hurtful thing, but in our definition of this, it just doesn't seem to go there. But how would you make that distinction?
Yeah. So you are correct. Mm-hmm. I would say cheating in itself is not abusive. Cheating, it sucks and it hurts more than anything, and it's heartbreaking. But the act of cheating isn't abusive, right? Because when we go back to our initial definition, it's not something that somebody would use to use power over you or trying to scare you in any way because they're cheating, right?
Right.
And so that's the difference. But cheating really is hurtful, right? And if somebody is cheating on you, you may not want to be with that person, but that doesn't mean that person's abusive.
Right.
But here's what I do want to say about that. It's the behaviors around the cheating that can sometimes be abusive.
That's where I was getting, I know that somebody could be using it as something. So, but go ahead. Yeah.
So for example, if the person is trying to gaslight you by
Right.
saying, "Oh, like what are you talking about? I didn't cheat," or they're downplaying your feelings about the fact that they cheated on you, or they're constantly lying to you about it, that's definitely emotional abuse. Because if they're manipulating you all the time and trying to be like, you're crazy, I didn't do that. That's definitely emotional abuse. But again, the act of cheating is not. But what we do see a lot when it comes to emotional abuse too, which I didn't bring up in the last episode, is one person is constantly accusing the other person of cheating. So we see that as well, and that's a form of abuse. And typically what that means is that the person who's doing the accusing is the one who's cheating.
Like projection.
So that's kind of where where the line is between just being unhealthy and crappy to being abusive.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Makes sense to me.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's hard. I mean, it brought up, like you said, like so many other things, so many other like layers that probably might happen in that kind of situation. But just the thing itself, we just can't like obviously say that. I think one of the other ones that comes to mind is like ghosting.
Yeah.
Like when kids talk about, or like teenagers talk about this person, we were talking, we were texting, and then all of a sudden gone, they were ghost. They were, they stopped texting me, never heard from this person again. Maybe that gets confused with something else in abusive relationships, but I'll ask you, like, what do you think about ghosting?
Yeah.
Is that abusive?
So it's sort of the same thing. Ghosting is not abusive.
Okay.
It's awful. It hurts really
right.
badly, right? But it's not abusive. But I think we see this all the time. We get like, actually, it's happened several times now where we're like, so after our forums, we give a survey out and get feedback from kids about what they thought of our presentation. And there's been a couple of times now where somebody said, you didn't talk about ghosting.
Oh, interesting. Right. Yeah.
And the reason is because when somebody ghosts you, it's really awful and it's hurtful. But going back to the definition, if the person, I would say this, if the person is ghosting you over and over and over again, where it's a pattern and they're playing mind games with you, then yeah, it could be considered abusive. But if you're talking and the person just decides, you know what, I'm done with this person, I'm going to ghost them, just doing it that one time really wouldn't be considered abusive. Hurtful, but not abusive, because it's not about power and control in any way. There's no fear of negative consequences having to do with ghosting at all. But maybe if it's a pattern, sure. And I think also this could be a whole other topic for a pod, honestly, is like having online relationships. I think a lot of, and you guys, probably know better than we do, but I think a lot of young people are in online relationships and not in-person relationships. And so when somebody that we're talking to online decides to ghost us, when all we've ever known is them online,
very
again, like
impersonal.
super impersonal, very hurtful. But I think we're seeing a lot more of that as times change and relationships change.
Right. And so, it just comes back to it's not a matter of controlling your behaviors, controlling your time, your space, your, physicality, anything that we sort of define it as. So, you know what, too, I mean, not to take it another direction, but sometimes like attachment styles that people bring, like you guys might also see a lot of this stuff on like social media and stuff. I know I see a ton of it, like, definitely on like Instagram and whatever, but like when sort of therapists talk about like attachment styles and people that sort of like retreat emotionally and back away, and that could be really hurtful too. I don't know if I'm being clear, but I just mean people who kind of like, if we're in like a conflict, like you and I, like in a relationship, and like one person is someone who just kind of like backs away emotionally, like, because a lot of times we do talk about abusive relationships that somebody will just like not talk to you for a week, and that as a tactic to control another person, that's abuse. That's very clear in that, like, two people in a relationship, one person not texting the other when it's very clear that they should be communicating and like that, but I don't want that to be confused either with like attachment styles where somebody is a little bit more like who retreats a little bit. I know I could be like that. And I just, maybe that's just me bringing that up for personal reasons, but it could be hurtful. I understand that it can be hurtful in a relationship, and I acknowledge that. So it's this is where it gets tricky, definitely, you know?
Yeah. What you're talking about is one person being really emotionally unavailable, and the other person is like wants to like say everything and like have like deep conversations, and the other person
got me 100%,
the other person's like, no, I don't want to talk that deeply, and actually I totally empathize with that on a personal level,
sure,
because I'm always like I want to be able to talk about what's going on, and I've had partners that have been like, yeah, no, I'm good. I would say, I mean, I think that's a harder one to like come up with a remedy for, other than it just kind of like takes a lot of work to be able to talk about your feelings.
And that might not work for the other partner in the relationship, and that's something that could be worked out or not worked out, which is totally fine. But
there could be common ground. You know what I mean? Like, okay, maybe this person doesn't want to talk right now. Maybe they're one of those people that needs more time to like think about it, and think about what they're gonna say and process things, and that's okay. You're absolutely right. Like that type of behavior, I see it a lot in high schools all the time, because one partner feels like maybe they're like putting more into it because the other person is not as emotionally available, and so that's kind of another thing where they're like, okay, does that mean that because my partner isn't like listening to me or acknowledging my feelings, does that make it abusive? It really doesn't. Again, it might be hurtful to you, but also what they're dealing with might not have anything to do with you. Right. Like it might just be how they are.
Right.
But I think like with all of these things, it's important for everyone who's watching this to understand that you're allowed to come up with things that work for you in a relationship. Like, just because your partner isn't emotionally available and it's hurting you, and we want to acknowledge it does suck when like you're ready to talk to your partner and like your partner's not ready to receive it, or you're the partner that feels like, no, I don't want to have to talk about my feelings all the time. That's okay too. But maybe that means that the relationship isn't the right one, and that's okay.
Right.
Because if your communication styles are different, that's okay. You're allowed to have certain standards for yourself. If somebody is ghosting you or cheating on you, that might not be the healthiest relationship for you. You're allowed to set the tone for what works for you, and it also takes time to figure out what you like and what you don't like, and that's okay too.
Was there I feel like there was one more that we spoke about that. No? Oh, okay.
One other thing. Yeah. This is like a very clear distinction between like unhealthy and abusive, is that you're arguing all the time.
Oh, okay. Right.
Definitely unhealthy, like to be arguing all the time. Another thing we see is like kind of like breaking up and getting back together. We see that as well. Those are definitely signs of an unhealthy relationship.
Right.
But if the argument is equal, if both people are kind of like starting the arguments, and the arguments are, like both people saying the same types of things to each other, that differentiates an unhealthy relationship versus an abusive one. An abusive relationship might look like one person is constantly berating the other person all the time, like calling them really, really bad names, being really hurtful all the time.
Like starting the arguments too, exactly. Like wanting arguments.
Correct. And one person feels like, okay, I'm not even doing anything. Right. Like, why is this person like saying really mean and nasty things to me all the time? That's where it becomes verbally abusive versus just arguing all the time. It's unhealthy, but not abusive, because it's not about power and control.
Well, right. That's it right there. Because especially the arguments, what are the arguments about, and how are they done? I mean, people can argue in a way that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Like that is trying to not argue, like is trying to get to a common ground, essentially. You know what I'm saying? And so like, it doesn't feel like it definitely wouldn't be in an abusive relationship where they're trying to come to a common ground. They're the abuser is demanding that their way is met. I don't want to say their needs, but their demands are met. Right. So it's not the same. It's not a fair argument. Right. It's not trying to see common ground at all. And whoever the victim is in that situation does not have any real autonomy or any like real like thing that they can say to get them out of it, other than just simply agreeing with what. And it's never going to win, really. Right. It's never really going to win for the victim.
Because if the victim says, if the abuser in that case is being verbally abusive and saying really mean and nasty things, the victim might take one opportunity to say, no, actually it's your fault or whatever, come up with a comeback. That means that the consequences will be way worse the next time.
Right.
So that's again where it becomes abusive, because one person's afraid of the other person, right?
Right.
Really key distinction.
Huge.
And I also just I feel compelled to say that, like, not all relationships are going to be perfect. People are going to have arguments, right? But if it's all the time, that would definitely be more unhealthy, on the unhealthy side.
Right. Great. Okay. So if you guys have any other suggestions of, what you might be confused about or looking for a distinction between like unhealthy or abusive, please leave a comment or
for sure.
DM us or whatever.
Yeah.
So we're going to wrap up. Laura, if you do want to talk about the resources one more time, and then
Sure. So if you are struggling with any of this, if you think you're being abused, or even if you think your relationship is unhealthy, there are so many resources out there. Certainly, I should also say we're a resource. I mean, we don't provide really too much direct service unless we're working with your school directly. But if we are in one of your schools, then we're absolutely a resource that you can rely on or
and we
talk
specifically
to.
only serve New Jersey.
Yes, only New Jersey. But for those who are in schools that we're not in, or if you're outside of New Jersey, there's really amazing resources out there. The first one is the National Teen Dating Violence Hotline. That number is 1-866-331-9474. And so hotlines are just numbers that you can call or text 24/7. They have services available in multiple languages. And it's literally just somebody to talk to, a counselor who can help guide you through whatever it is you're dealing with. So that's a great resource, the National Teen Dating Violence Hotline. There's also the National Domestic Violence Hotline. So same thing, they're a hotline you can call or text 24/7. And they can really help more so with shelter for adults. So if there's an adult in your life who's looking for shelter or needs counseling, they can refer you to your local domestic violence agency. And that's a national number you can call or text all the time. That number is 1-800-799-7233. And then this is a New Jersey-based organization called Second Floor, the Second Floor Helpline. That number is 1-888-222-2228. Again, a great resource that you can call or text anytime, but they can also help with things like mental health struggles, bullying, substance abuse. They're a really great resource as well. So all of those are available to you, and we'll leave those in the comments. In the bio. On the bio underneath as well. So, this is a good conversation.
Cool. Yeah.
Thanks, Joe.
Thank you very much. All right. Bye, everybody.
All right, bye.